that my talk had a good reception. I hope it is true, particularly from the young generation. Some of the youngsters have said that Champaklal's records have opened their inner eye. They are able to appreciate which they did not do before with a new approach and a new vision. I am also very happy to be able to offer my gratitude to Maharaj Champaklal. I owe a debt to him, and through these talks I may be able to repay a fraction of that debt. You may ask, what is the debt? He has saved me almost from the jaws of death twice. One materially and another in a subtle way. Materially and physically, when I was passing through a state of bad health after the departure of the Maharaj. At one time I was almost collapsing, sinking, and thought I was going away. Suddenly I called out, "Champaklal, Champaklal," a cry of panic. Champaklal was in his own room. He heard the cry and rushed towards me, clasped me in his embrace, and he also called, "Sri Aurobindo, Sri Aurobindo, Sri Aurobindo," with the highest pitch of his voice. I was called back to life. Second one, he writes in his own book, in his visions and experiences, which I didn't know about, that at one time, reason he doesn't know, that I was giving up my life by drowning. He saw it, he jumped to the water and rescued me from this catastrophe. These are the two things. I know one and another he has recorded. So I cannot be sufficiently grateful to him for this service he has rendered. And certainly he has done much more, which all of you or some of you will be knowing, and which will come in our recording. Now, in our last talk, what I wanted to bring out, two things there. One is how much Mother has done for us, completely forgetting our own personal equation. Secondly, and most important aspect here, is Champaklal's own part in all this, the relationship between Mother and Sri Aurobindo. Then, thirdly, his own personal aspect. His service that he had rendered completely without ever thinking of himself, and his consciousness to be always near about Mother and Sri Aurobindo, that I wanted to bring out. You remember that what was his devoted service like and what was the result as of that service. What I wanted to bring out through these illustrations, the character of a true bhakta, that was Champaklal. We see how, at that time you will remember, how Sri Aurobindo's voice, how Sri Aurobindo's touch, how to be near to Sri Aurobindo and filled him with a divine ecstasy, as it were. All other worldly pleasures and pursuits were as sawdust to him beside the apparently trivial tokens. This reminds us very strongly that he belonged to the line of the traditional bhaktas that we hear, say for instance Nirodbaran, whose devotion and love for Sri Krishna was beyond measure. So this also in the case, present instance, we find in the case of our Maharaj Champaklal. Then I have left out purposely our service to Sri Aurobindo at that time and our relationship, because I have dealt with that aspect in my book 12 Years with Sri Aurobindo. Perhaps there may be some here who have not read it. But if I go on elaborating on that or again reduplicating all that I have written, then time will run short. I can't cover what I want to do. Still, one or two things that I have missed there in the book, I may tell about it now. First thing is, when he had been harnessed to the service of Sri Aurobindo, five or six of us decided that when Sri Aurobindo would recover, all of us would do him pranam during darshan time or during our birthdays. So we did, all of us in turns, 4 or 5 or 6. Champaklal also did it. After 1 or 2 or 3 occasions, Champaklal was not doing pranam to Sri Aurobindo, and others were doing. So I asked him, what's the matter? Why they are not doing pranam? After a while he answered, when I bowed out to him, it is extremely difficult for me to come out of it. So I don't do the pranam. You can imagine his consciousness. Second one, at one time he fell ill from a very bad eye disease. I had to take him to the hospital. The oculist examined him and said, it is a bad case of iritis. Some of you may know, eye disease. I should be given complete rest, and he should not move about. Let him be confined to his own room. I told mother about it. Mother didn't say anything. So Champaklal went to his own room. He had a room at that time, and kept himself completely confined. 2 or 3 or 4 days passed. One day mother went to see him. Mother saw that his condition was very serious. He was completely dejected, morose, he had no life in himself, and mother thought that this won't do. So mother came to Sri Aurobindo and reported to him that if he remains 1 or 2 days more, he will die, or his eye will be completely lost. So I want to bring him out. Mother brought him out, and he was serving again, and he became completely all right in 2 or 3 days. So our doctors have another superior doctor who does the cure. So these are the 2 instances that I have failed or I did not remember in the book. Now if you want to, 1 or 2 instances I can repeat for some of those who have not read or who have not remembered. How Champaklal was always ready to give comfort, to give some ease to Sri Aurobindo, who had never uttered a single word about what he wanted. You have to feel it, you have to see it, and if you find that something is needed, then you do it. That also I have written in my book. So one instance comes to my mind that Sri Aurobindo used to wait for mother's coming. When mother came, then Sri Aurobindo used to walk in the room. And when he was waiting, sitting on the edge of the bed, after a good meal, he was feeling drowsy. So his body used to sway like this, almost on the point of falling down at times. 4 or 5 of us were simply looking at it, not thinking of doing anything to prevent it. Champaklal saw it at once. He ran and brought some pillows, big pillows, put them as backrest, and he himself, worked as a backrest from behind. And Sri Aurobindo felt very comfortable. He had a good nap till the mother came. So you see, this was Champaklal's intuitive faculty or identification of consciousness with Sri Aurobindo. And there are many others. I leave that out. Then the other thing about me, I can give an instance which I shall never forget, and I have written about that in my book. We used to serve Sri Aurobindo for washing his mouth. He used to do one part, I used to do the second part. The first part was his. Now when he had finished the first part, I come up and finish the second part. That second part was, after washing, Sri Aurobindo used to massage his gum. You will be surprised to hear, with oriental balm. Oriental balm has become, I think, obsolete now, or it may be still in the bazaar. I have never heard, I was surprised to see that he was massaging with the oriental balm. In the course of the massage, I was standing by the side. What happened? He pulled out something in his hand. I told you that he is very impersonal. He was looking straight this, neither to me nor to any other side. He brought out something, then with the left hand he was stretching his hand to give something to me. I stretched my hand, he put it, just gently put it, looking forward, not to me at all. I looked at it, I was extremely surprised. Then it was a whole tooth which has come out. And he gave me with a very soft touch, very careful, very soft, tender touch, and I looked at it. Champaklal was behind. I ran to him. He said, see what it is. Champaklal saw it, his eyes became big. He was very much surprised, and he thought that it was his due. How could I get it? He was asking a question in his eyes. So I said, this is the truth. Then I gave it to him. It became his property. Now I repent that I had given to him. I should have kept it, then it would have been a very spectacle for what you call museum. People would come and give me thanks and so on. I have deprived myself of all that reward. Well, but it is, I think, the one by knows it may be in our museum. A whole tooth. It reminded me of Buddha's tooth which had gone to Ceylon. As you know, I could have also done the same thing, taking the tooth and go about proclaiming Sri Aurobindo's mission. However, it was not to be. So these are some of the things that happen, and many others I don't need to. The whole thing is this Champaklal service. And particularly when Sri Aurobindo called Champaklal, you would have been in seventh heaven, as they say. And it is true, there was something, as you can understand, a magic in the name that Mother called or Sri Aurobindo called. I remember when I was writing to him letters, the first time he wrote in the pad or in my book, Nirod, and underlined the word Nirod. When I saw it for the first time, I got a thrill which you can imagine what kind of it. This is the first time he wrote Nirod, underlines the word. So I would not be surprised if Champaklal heard every time when he was called by his name. Now, what I would like to do, to spring a surprise on you. Oh yes, the last scene, I must repeat. I think Dumanbhai also knows. We have said that on the eve of his passing, Sri Aurobindo embraced Champaklal very, very passionate. By the way, some people have objected to the use of my word passionate. It is a mistake if you take it in the sense that we use it. But it is another use. I have found, all of us, most of us have found in a life divine, in Savitri, passion of rhythm, passion of delight. It is that passion which I have used in that sense. That means intense feeling, passionate embrace. So I think it is not a mistake. Then the last scene that I have been talking of, you remember, when Sri Aurobindo had left his body, Champaklal was at the foot of bed. He didn't know that Sri Aurobindo had left. When he came to realize it, all of you may have known, he bawled out, cried aloud, so aloud that the whole room was reverberating. It is as if I can give a comparison, a mother, when she loses her most dear child, it is that sort of a spontaneous cry that came out of his heart. Mother had to stop him. So this is what Champaklal is. How much his pulse or his nadi, as we say, was in tune with Sri Aurobindo, one with Sri Aurobindo, you can see. Sometimes I feel, well, whether he loved Mother best or Sri Aurobindo best. At least this is the case that we have seen. Now, apropos of this, I want to spring a surprise on you by a digression. That digression is from the book that I have brought, which I will read, The Life of Leonardo da Vinci. I think some of you, most of you, I don't know who Leonardo da Vinci was. There is a very beautiful episode in his life. I want to read that. The point behind it, perhaps some of you will be able to detect. Even if you don't detect, it will be a reward to you to know something of Leonardo's life in this book. So if you don't mind, I can read it out and see how you take it. Leonardo has come to a place called I think the Italians, if any are here, may be knowing the place. It is called Vaprio. Vaprio. I don't know where it is. There were some groups of people there who were experimenting in alchemy and esoteric sciences, etc., etc. Then there he came and became a guest of one of these scientists whose name I need not pronounce. Then there were lots of people. They were all well known to Leonardo, and they were talking, but Leonardo, preferring solitude, held aloof from them. On the other hand, he soon became very friendly with Francesco, the host's little son. Timid, as bashful as a girl, the boy for a long while fought shy of him. But once, entering the artist's room, that's me, Leonardo, on an errand from his father, he saw the varicolored glasses with the aid of which the artist was studying the laws of supplementary colors. Leonardo invited him to look through them. The amusement was to the boy's liking. Familiar objects took on a fairyland appearance, now somber, now joyous, now inimical, now kindly, depending on whether you are looking through a yellow, a blue or red glass. Then, seeing all this, Francesco could no longer contain himself and began clapping his hands. But most of all, the boy was captivated, what they call by the word rain gods. But that I leave aside. Then in the village school of that locality where the boy was a student, Francesco studied but lazily. He memorized Latin grammar with aversion. At the sight of the ink-smeared green covers of his arithmetic, his face would lengthen. But Leonardo's science was such that it seemed to the boy as interesting as a fairy tale. The appliances of mechanics, of optics, of acoustics, of hydrostatics, etc. attracted me, just as though they were living magic toys. Then, with Francesco, Leonardo spoke of all things trustingly and simply. Not only did he teach him, but in his turn learn from him. And recalling the word of the Lord, "Verily I say unto you, except ye be converted and become as little children, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven." He would add, "Nor shall ye enter into the kingdom of knowledge." It was at this period he was writing his book of stars. Then, on March nights, when the first breath of spring was already waiting upon the air, he observed the course of the stars. He drew the spots of the moon, so on and so forth. On one occasion, the boy asked him if it were true that of the stars that they were like diamonds, set by God within the crystal spheres of the heavens, which revolving draw them along in their progress and produce music. The master explained that according to the law of friction, the spheres revolving for the duration of so many millennia, their crystals would have been eroded, their music would have ceased, and the irrepressible dancers would have ceased moving. Then, having pierced with a needle a sheet of paper, he allowed him, the boy, to look through the opening. Francesco beheld the stars, devoid of their rays, resembling radiant, round, infinitely small dots or globules. These dots, said Leonardo, are enormous, many of them worlds, hundreds, thousands of times larger than ours. Then, which however is by no means worse nor more insignificant than all the other heavenly bodies. Then, the laws of mechanics, etc., discovered by the intelligence of man and sovereign on earth, govern world and suns. Thus did he establish the nobility of our world. Then, just as an incorruptible star, said the Master, just such a radiant mote of dust does the earth seem to the inhabitants of other planes. Much of what he said Francisco did not understand, but when, throwing back his head, he would contemplate the starry sky, he was overcome with awe. Then he used to ask, what is there beyond the stars? Reply, other worlds, Francisco, other stars which we see not, and beyond them still others. Yes, but in the end, in the very end, Leonardo, there is no end. There is no end, repeated the boy. And Leonardo felt Francisco's hand tremble within his. In the light of the unmoving flame of a lamp, burning on a little table in the midst of instruments, he saw that the child's face had become covered with sudden pallor. But where? Asked he slowly, with growing amazement. Where is paradise then, Messer Leonardo? Messer means, what do you call it? Old French, old Italian, they say it is Signor. Then the angels, the martyrs, the Madonna, and God the Father sitting on his throne, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. The Master was about to retort that God is everywhere, to all the grains of sand on the earth, as well as in the suns and universes, but kept his peace, sparing the child's faith. Then Leonardo spoke of nature with restraint, with a seeming coldness and asperity, caring only for scientific clarity. But beneath this dispassionateness and coldness, Francisco surmised the artist's love towards all living things, as well for the tiny leaf, as well as pitiably wrinkled face of a newborn baby. Then here, at times in the thickness of the forest, he would stop and smiling gaze for long at a green shoot of grass struggling out from last year's withered leaf, the boy. At a bee, weak from its winter sleep, crawling with difficulty into the unopened cup of a snowdrop. The sun, through the semi-transcendent, semi-translucent branches, illuminated the flaxen fair hair, the long beard, and the thick, jutting eyebrows of Leonardo, surrounding his head with an aura. Calm was his face and splendid. At such moments, he resembled ancient Pan, who hearkens to the growing of the grass and the babbling of underground well springs. Then we come next. On one occasion, there were many erudite people there. A poet living there came to pay them a visit. At supper, growing offended at Leonardo, who had not lauded his stanzas sufficiently, he launched on a dispute about the advantages of poesy over painting. I hope you will like this episode here. The artist kept his peace, but finally the bitter feeling of the poet aroused amusement within him, and he took it in him half jestingly. Leonardo says, painting is superior to poetry, if only in that it depicts the works of God rather than the conceptions of men, with which latter the poets content themselves. At least those of the present day, they depict not, but merely describe, borrowing from others all that they have, trafficking in the goods of others. They do but compose, gathering all rubbish from different sciences. Well might they be compared with sellers of stolen goods. Then, when somebody began to refute him, Leonardo, little by little, became absorbed, and this time he spoke without any jesting. What he says, beautiful. The eye giveth to man a more perfect knowledge of nature than that which is heard. In verbal description, there is but a series of separate images following one another, whereas in a picture all images, colors appear simultaneously, blending into one like to sounds in an accord, which makes possible in painting as well as in music a greater degree of harmony than in poesy. But where there is no higher harmony, there is also no higher beauty. Ask a lover, which is the more delectable to him, a portrait of his beloved or a description, even if the latter be by the greatest of poets. All involuntarily smile at his argument. Here is something that happened to me once, continued Leonardo. A certain youth of Florence was so taken with a feminine face in a picture of mine that he purchased it and wanted to destroy those signs which showed the picture of a sacred nature in order that he might without fear kiss his beloved image. But conscience overcame the desire of love. He put the picture out of his house, since otherwise he had no peace. There, ye verse makers strive in describing the charm of woman to arouse in men such a fervor of passion. Signori, I will not say it myself, I know how much is lacking in me, but of such an artist as has attained perfection, verily, through his power of contemplation, he is no longer merely a man. Whether he be a spectator of heavenly splendor or images monstrous, laughable, pitiable, horrible, he is a very potentate like God. So this is about painting. You may remember his Mona Lisa. Then there are all those there, the assembly, they were saying, he was like to a man who was awakened in the darkness, Leonardo, at too early an hour when all others are still asleep. Lonely among those of his day, he wrote his diaries in a cryptic script for some brother in a distant future. He would never allow publishing all his drawings. And for him also in the mark, etc., etc. So there he was like to a man who was awakened in the darkness. That reminded me when I read this. Govinda once told us, I have come much ahead of time. So here, in the darkness, he has come, who is awakened in the darkness. Then here, the last episode, which is very fine. The Leonardo was not interested in all these alchemies, but he was interested in something more concrete. In that place, it seems, there was a subterranean iron mine. a subterranean passage, steep, dark, resembling a well with half-ruined slippery steps descending in the direction, led to the shops. The guide went. No guide would follow him except one who came forward. Leonardo, bearing Francesco in his arms, followed him. Bearing in his arms. The boy, despite the supplications of his father and the dissuasions of the master, had won his way after much imploring to be taken along. The passage constantly grew narrower. They had counted up to 200 steps, but the descent still continued, and it seemed as if it would never end. A stuffy dampness was wafted up from below. Leonardo was striking the walls with a pickaxe, listening to the sound, inspected the stones. Then he asked with a kindly smile, feeling Francesco snuggling up to him. The boy answered, "Nay, it is not. With you I am never afraid." He was a boy. And after a silence, he added quietly, "Is it true, Messer Leonardo, what father says, that you are going away soon?" "Yes, Francesco." "Whither?" "To Romagna, to serve Caesar." "To Romagna? Is that far?" "It is several days' journeys from here." "Several days?" repeated Francesco. "That means we shall never see each other again." "Nay, why should that be? I shall come to you just as soon as I can." The boy grew pensive. Then with both arms, in impulsive tenderness, he embraced Leonardo's neck, snuggled up to him still closer, and said in a whisper, "Oh, Messer Leonardo, take me with you." "Whatever art thou saying, lad? How can it be? A war is going on there. There was war between France and Italy. Let there be war. I tell you that I fear not when I am with you. I shall be your servant. I shall clean your clothes, sweep your rooms, give the horses their feed, and also, as you know, I can find seashells and imprint plans on paper with charcoal. Why? You yourself were saying, but the other day, that I do it well. I shall do everything that you may order me to do, like a grown-up. Oh, do but take me, Messer Leonardo. Do not forsake me." "But what of your father? Or dost thou think that he will let thee go with me?" "He will let me go. He will. I shall wheedle it out of him. He is kind. He will not refuse me if I cry. Well, if he will not let me go, then I shall slip away on the sly. Only do you tell me that I may?" "Yes." "Nay, Francesco, I know that thou dost but say so, yet thou thyself will not leave thy father. He is old, poor fellow." "Poor fellow, yes, I am a poor fellow, and yet you too. Oh, Messer Leonardo, you do not know. You think me a little fellow, but I know everything. Auntie says that you are a wizard, and the schoolmaster also says that you are wicked, and that I may send my soul to perdition with you. Once when he spoke ill of you, I answered him so that he almost gave me a beating, and they all fear you. But I fear you not, because you are better than all of them, and I want to be with you always." Leonardo stroked his head in silence, and for some reason there came back to him how several years ago he had been carrying in the very same way the little lad who had taken the part of the golden age at festival. Suddenly The clear eyes of Francisco dimmed, the corners of his mouth drooped, and he whispered, "Well, what can I do? Let it be so then, let it be. For I know why you do not want to take me with you. You love me not. Whereas I," he burst into uncontrollable sobs. "Cease, art thou not ashamed? Better listen to what I tell thee. When thou art grown up, I shall take thee as a pupil, and we shall live gloriously together and shall never part again." Francisco raised his eyes to him, with the tears still glistening on his long lashes, and looked at him with an intent, prolonged gaze. "Is that true? You will take me? Perhaps you do but say so in order to console me, but will forget about it later." "Nay, I promise thee, Francisco." "You promise? But after how many years?" "Well, in 7 or 8. When thou shalt be 15, so you are 7 only." 7? Francisco checked upon his fingers. "And we shall part no more?" "Never, till very death." "It is well then, if it be for certain, but only if it be for certain. In 7 years?" "Yes, for certain." Francisco gave him a happy smile, caressing him with a special caress he had invented, which consisted of rubbing his cheek against Leonardo's face as cats do. "But do you know, Messer Leonardo, it is amazing. I had a dream once. It seemed I was descending in darkness, down long, long stairs, just exactly as you are doing now. And it seemed as if I had always been doing so, and would always be doing it, but there was never an end to them, and someone whose face I could not see was carrying me. But I knew that this person was my mother. And yet, I do not remember her. She died when I was very little. And here now is this dream in reality. Only it is you and not my mother. And with you, I feel just as well as I did with her. Nor have I any fear." Leonardo glanced at him with infinite tenderness. In the darkness, the child's eyes shone with a mysterious light. He offered his lips to Leonardo trustingly, as though really to a mother. The master kissed him, and it seemed to him that in this kiss, Francisco was surrendering his soul to him. Feeling the heart of the child beating against his, firm of step, with insatiable inquisitiveness, following the dim lantern down the fearful stairs of the iron mine, Leonardo descended lower and lower into the subterranean murk. So I think you may be able to feel why I have read this episode. So I think we can stop here tonight.